The truth is stranger than fiction, but it is because fiction is obliged to stick to possibilities, but the truth isn't. The words of acclaimed writer Mark Twain. Past events, when juxtaposed against modern-day accepted norms, seem impossible to fathom, yet they were yesterday's customs. Oral traditions may deviate from the truth slightly, or, depending on the source, be flavored with barely an ounce of the truth. But recorded history tells a more accurate story of past occurrences written in ink and captured on film. In tonight's episode of Untold Stories, we bring you some of the strangest truthful stories ever recorded in Saint Lucia. This is strictly an exercise meant to refresh what was reported in the news and current affairs of Saint Lucia. Believe it or not. Rick Wayne has said it so many times that we laugh out loud when he says it, but all that laughing should stop. A study conducted by the University of New Mexico and published in the Proceedings of the Royal Society compared the IQ in a particular country with its disease burden. It was scientifically proven that Saint Lucia had the second highest burden of infectious diseases, and Saint Lucians have the second lowest IQ in the world. Believe it or not, but it's been scientifically proven. And in case you're wondering, Equatorial New Guinea had the lowest IQ. Before we move on into the unbelievable weird things that have happened in Saint Lucia, here are some interesting international facts. A goldfish has a memory span of 3 seconds. The longest recorded flight of a chicken is 13 seconds. The average person laughs 13 times a day. I'm sure during this broadcast you'll reach your quota. The strongest muscle in the body is the tongue. I bet you didn't know that. And despite the strength of your tongue, it is impossible to lick your elbow. See? There you go, try it. Babies are born without kneecaps. Actually, kneecaps don't appear until the child reaches 2 to 6 years of age. It is impossible to sneeze with your eyes open, and our eyes are always the same size from birth, but our nose and ears never stop growing. Now that I can believe. Humans blink over 10 million times a year, and for some strange reason, women blink twice as much as men. I wonder why. Did you know that people with blue eyes see better in the dark? And no, color contacts do not qualify as blue eyes. However, when someone dies, hearing is usually the first sense to go. I wonder how the scientists know that. There are more female than male millionaires in the USA, and nearly 22,000 checks will be deducted from the wrong account over the next hour. Did you know that lions mate over 50 times in a day? Or that a male baboon can kill a leopard, but a female can't? How about this one? Human birth control pills can work on a gorilla. I know that one for a fact. How about this one? Elephants are the only animals that cannot jump. Civil servants will love this one. Tuesday is the most productive day of the week. The shortest runway on Earth is not more than 1,300 feet and is located on the Caribbean island of Saba. There are more churches per square mile in Jamaica than anywhere else in the world, a total of 1,600. Out of all the 700 islets, islands, reefs and coves of the beautiful Caribbean, only 2% are inhabited. Here's one to gross you out. Before the mid-19th century, dentures were commonly made with teeth pulled from the mouths of dead soldiers. And how about this? After Pope Gregory IX associated cats with devil worship, cats throughout Europe were exterminated in droves. This sudden lack of cats led to the spread of disease because infected rats ran free. The most devastating of these diseases, the bubonic plague, killed 100 million people. I would really like to know which part of the Bible speaks of cats. People were buried alive so often in the 19th century that inventors patented safety coffins that would give the dead the ability to alert those above ground if they were still alive. Today, we have judge, jury, lawyers, and a fair trial is a constitutional right. However, in medieval times, the accused often faced trial by ordeal, where they were forced to stick their arms in a vat of boiling water. If their arm emerged unscathed, it is believed God protected them, thus proving their innocence. And amazingly, animals were put on trial in medieval times and routinely sentenced to death. I have a dog at home I would really like to put on trial for chewing my shoes. On a more serious note, child killer and rapist Pedro Lopez, known as the Monster of the Andes, was convicted in 1983 of killing 110 young girls, although he confessed to killing 300. Lopez was released in 1998 after serving Ecuador's maximum sentence of 20 years. His whereabouts are presently unknown. 20 years. Today, it has been scientifically proven that smoking kills and is embossed on every cigarette box as a deterrent. Whether it is effective or not is debatable. But did you know that prior to the 1960s, tobacco companies ran physician-endorsed ads that suggested smoking had health benefits? Can you imagine Dr. Stephen King being the poster boy for cigarettes? When love goes awry, man can do some strange and unbelievable things. Consider this. Peter the Great executed his wife's lover, then forced her to keep her lover's head in a jar of alcohol in her bedroom. That pales in comparison to the Ottoman Empire's Sultan Ibrahim, who had 280 of his concubines drowned in the ocean after one of them slept with another man. Wow, talk about a hope well. Cruel, shocking, outrageous, despicable, but true. It is not only facts about nature that are jaw-dropping. Human behavior, the propensity for crime and violence, and some simply mind-boggling crimes would have Ripley himself stunned. One last big score is a common stroke in crime movies, in most crime movies. The criminal who's tired of the game but knows no other way. Which brings us to Charles Ray Fuller, whose last big score was also apparently his first clumsy score. One bright spring day, Fuller decided to walk into his local bank and attempted to cash a check for $360 billion US. That's a real shake your head moment. What was going through this guy's mind? What was going through his head when he walked into the bank? Fuller had stolen a bank check leaf and had dreams of opening his own recording studio. Where was he going to open the studio? On Mars? When we return, we tell you some of the most astonishing things that have ever happened in Saint Lucia, like the kidnapping of a dead body and the man who was buried alive for 24 days. And later, a Sufre man sews his girlfriend's vagina.
The wait is over. We finally received our new shipment of assorted used Japanese auto parts. The hard-to-find Toyota Aqua parts, the largest variety of Noah, Alphard, Hiace, Swift, and Vitz parts have arrived. Now Autodomain has the largest stock of used automatic transmissions, engines, and body parts for all the Japanese imports, especially the newer models. Best of all, we've moved to Massad Gruzile, directly behind the 24-hour gym to serve you better. Need a part? Call us today. Telephone 584-2621.
If I would have known that you wouldn't be here anymore, I would have made the moments last a little longer. 'Cause now I'm alone and you're just a memory in my mind. I would have given anything to say goodbye. My big bro, the general. Jay. 21 gun salute, I'll see you soon on the other side. If I would have known, if I would have known, I'd have broke parole and come home sooner. If I would have known.
At the turn of the century, the Voice newspaper relayed mostly happenings from Britain and internationally. Seldom was there news of the day from next door. But every once in a while, they printed a gem. December 10th, 1935, Victorian Hermit took out an advert. To whom it may concern, shopkeepers and the public in general are hereby notified that I will not be responsible for any debts contracted by my wife, Irida Hermit, niece and Bryce, she having left my house and protection for over 2 years. Believe it or not, the Voice printed it. On Thursday, October 14th, 1937, the Voice reported the implausible. The grave of a young man buried on Sunday, the 11th of October, 1937, was found open 2 days later, and the coffin was empty, except for a note within demanding a payment of $100 for the return of the dead body. Implausible, but true. Today, nearly every room in the house has one. Hundreds of channels are available on demand. Flat screen, high def, now even 3D television is available. But the television arrived here late. Believe it or not, in 1965, televisions were being rented, not hire purchase, but rented to households. And best of all, it came with a free aerial installation at your home. Difficult to fathom, but true. They are majestic and graceful. Some have grown to 98 feet and weigh over 200 tons. On average, they live well past 70, and bowheads can live for over 100 years. Every year, up to 2,000 beach themselves, mostly in large groups. Single live strandings are often the result of illness or injury, which almost inevitably ends in death in the absence of human intervention. Monday morning, November 1st, 1965. Scores of Castries people rushed to VG Beach when news reached the town of the capturing of a 20-foot whale about 100 yards from shore. The whale, which was found in about 6 feet of water, was first seen by Linton Valdon and Maynard Collymore of Castries. The two men were attempting to entrap the mammoth mammal when they were joined by Roderick Menz, who swam out fully clothed and succeeded in tying a rope around the whale's tail. Menz then swam away from the animal and tied the other end of the rope to a trunk of an almond tree. With the help of several other people, the whale was eventually dragged ashore. The 2-ton whale was killed on the beach and towed into Castries by boat, and the meat was sold at the Castries market. This one is a bit of a shocker. A lightning bolt is about 54,000 degrees Fahrenheit and flashes over 3 million times a day worldwide. Lightning kills about 2,000 people annually, but on July 6, 1954, a cow was properly fried by a lightning strike in Vieux-Fort. I wonder what they did with all that roasted meat. September 8th, 1954. A freak baby is born at Victoria Hospital. A baby girl which could not be described any other way but a freak was born at the hospital. Sounds strange? The child's head was fused to the body without a neck, although it had a chin. The mouth appeared to be in the center of the face, with the nose and the eyes above. It had no forehead, and there was only a slight patch of hair in the back of the head. Witnesses describe it as a donkey, while others liken it to a frog. The freak baby lived for just 1 day. Being buried alive is perhaps most people's greatest fear. To intentionally volunteer to be put into a grave alive is unimaginable. But believe it or not, it happened in Saint Lucia. Maurice Eudoxon broke all known records by remaining in a grave under hypnosis for 24 days. He was buried at George V Park as part of the attractions at a Coney Island show. 24 days later, he was dug up by 5 men who took him from the casket to the stage at the circus, still under hypnosis, to be greeted by a massive crowd which had gathered. The hypnotist, Larry Dale, then called on Eudoxon, who stirred slightly. Eudoxon was then given some water and he started acting in an agitated manner. Unbelievable, but true. History, with all her volumes vast, half but 1 page. In 2011, a bus plunged off a cliff in Saint Lucia, killing 17 people. Was history being repeated in a more deadly incident? Well, consider this. In June 1965, 16 people were injured as a bus plunged 100 feet off a cliff in Ancillary. Bet you didn't know that. This is where the wealthy, the rich, and the wannabe rich live. Hundreds of acres of gently rolling hills, a lush golf course, and mansions, albeit concrete monstrosities. Funny how the cost of land in this part of St. Lucia is mostly quoted in US dollars. Just 1 square foot will run you $15 in Yankee money or 40 Eastern Caribbean currency. But believe it or not, in 1973, this same property was being advertised at 54 cents per square foot. Makes you wonder what will happen in the next 30 years. The first flight landed in St. Lucia years ago. Since then, there have been thousands of takeoffs and landings without incident. The thought of a seasoned pilot crashing, especially in familiar skies, seems unbelievable, but it truly isn't. A plane piloted by a young St. Lucian named Antoine Suraj crashed into the peak of Mount Jimmy on Monday, 29 October 1973. According to reports, Suraj was on his way to Uranora at about 9 p.m. when his 9-seater Islander crashed. On board were Wilman Dalman, his 2 sons William and Robert. Believe it or not, Mr. Dalman's body had to be cut in half and carried down the mountain. It is commonplace for St. Lucians to be deported from the United States for overstaying their visas or being incarcerated and released. It is rare to hear of US citizens being given the boot from anywhere. But history has always recorded the make and might of John Compton. In 1974, he got frustrated with 2 American citizens, Borden Stevenson and his female companion, Marjorie Miller. Stevenson was son of former US presidential candidate Adlai Stevenson. The visitors had been in St. Lucia for nearly 2 years. Due to their exemplary worst behavior, they were deemed undesirables, and Governor Ira Simmons signed, and Compton gave them the swift boot off this 238 square mile rock of tropical paradise. David and Jean England were ironically enough both from England. They lived in St. Lucia since 1968, but in 1983, Compey alleged that Mr. England had been involved in the recruitment of St. Lucian youth for training in terrorism and sabotage in Libya. Remember that? The Englands were shipped back to England. Compey didn't play that. Then there was this guy, Leonard Ogilvie, a man with no nationality, a man who was not a lawyer, won cases in court, a man who was not a lawyer but applied to be a magistrate, a man who was not a lawyer but made the headlines more often than Richard Frederick himself. But if the SLP was pussyfooting with him, when Sir John returned in 2006, Ogilvie had a surprise coming. persona non grata. Post haste, the African/Englishman and wannabe barrister was given Compton's heavy right foot as well. Why will we? Would you believe it if I told you a Catholic priest in the St. Peter Denry Church devoted the end of his sermon to cast a curse on a thief? Well, believe it. At the end of January 1974, thieves broke into this church and all the money boxes were emptied. The shock of this desecration pervaded the Christian community of the village, and the members of the Holy Name Society were particularly disturbed. The parish priest in that Sunday's Mass devoted the Mass to the performance of the ritual exercise on the head of those concerned, and he was joined by the congregation in singing the libera for the dead. Many people present were touched by the rendition, yet had mixed feelings of anger at the thieves and fear for the parish priests. Catholics, believe it or not, it happened. When we return, Tyrone Maynard is charged for planning arson, and a 19-year-old rapes a 74-year-old under a mango tree.
Looking to take your projects to the next level? Caribbean Levels Limited has just what you need. Introducing our must-haves: standard stirrups, sleek ridge caps, and the ultra-tough Permacard Gen 3 roofing sheets. And guess what? You can shop it all online at CaribbeanLevelsLimited.com. Got questions? Our live chat has answers right at your fingertips. Don't wait. Visit our site today and discover why Caribbean Levels Limited continues to lead the way in innovation. Caribbean Levels Limited, we've got you covered, guaranteed.
The 1978 to 1982 period was perhaps the most chaotic in the history of Saint Lucia, thanks in part to these two guys. The one on the left said, "Dynamite is easy to get and throw." The other was quoted as saying he will wear green until the revolution is over. Together, they united the workers of St. Lucia, and together, they divided the labor rights. They were the alpha and omega of everything that was good and absolutely terrible. This period saw crime waves and unapologetic radicalism. Today, we know this man as the face of the trade unions. He has taken part in more demonstrations than Sarah Flood and Ras Hyper combined. But in 1978, he was charged with conspiring to commit a crime of arson by explosion to a motor car. Maynard was arrested near the home of Mr. John Howard, personnel officer of M&C Limited, together with another man. Police alleged that Maynard planned to destroy Mr. Howard's car. The police also recovered a quantity of explosives at the scene. He was represented by the SLP's MAPP lawyer, Kenneth Foster, and released on $9,000 bail. Believe it or not, workers, it happened. The scales of justice can be balanced or freakishly unstable, depending on the quality of representation, the judge's mental state, and the mitigating circumstances. On February 13, 1978, the court charged Eustace Dembo, a 41-year-old ex-police officer, with murder, only to have the sentence mitigated to manslaughter a month later. Justice Barrymore Renwick, in his luminary wisdom, said, "Every once in a while, we all had a difficult task to perform, and his most difficult task has been to sentence the accused." Believe it or not, the learned judge sentenced him to 3 years imprisonment for killing another man. But when Justice Renwick's heavy gravel pounded in the case of Jules Remy in 1979, believe it or not, justice was served. This case simplifies the frivolity of crime, the stupidness people lose their lives over. On October 29, 1979, The Voice newspaper relayed the events. Remy said he went to Marlow Tiroche to tend to his cow. When he reached Marlow, he saw Moise standing by his cow, and he said to Moise, "You said that you will chop my cow." So, naturally, he and Moise began to argue and words started exchanging. Then the argument became heated. Moise began to run after him with a cutlass. When he saw that Moise would chop him, he picked up a stone and hit Moise with it. Remy told the court that after he hit Moise, Moise continued to run after him, so he stood up and he held Moise's hand and both of them fell on the ground. Moise punched Remy and they began to struggle for the cutlass. Remy said he managed to get on top of Moise and he pressed Moise's hand against the cutlass. When he saw that the cutlass had cut Moise's hand, he got up and he ran. Moise got up and gave chase with the cutlass. Remy said, since he did not know what Moise had in mind to do to him, he picked up a bigger stone and hit Moise for the final time. Moise fell and died. After that, Remy ran away, went home, washed his clothes like nothing ever happened. Then, what happens? For taking the life of Harrison Moise, Remy was sentenced to death by Justice Rennick. Believe it or not, he was never hung and is living out his twilight years in the Roche Castries. It happens in Saint Lucia. We all say it. Times are hard. We can't feed our kids. We can't send them to school. It's all the government's fault. Others will say, why not just drop them for the government? Sounds ridiculous, right? But on February 9th, 1985, two boys, Aaron age 4 and Jeff 2, were dropped off for the government and the mother disappeared. The Department of Social Services were able to track down the children's grandmother. End of story, you may think, right? Nope. Believe it or not, 2 days later, Granny herself dropped the children back for the government and abandoned them. Only in Saint Lucia. The Saint Lucia government yesterday announced a series of tough new measures to take care of mounting death on Saint Lucia's roads. That has become a matter of serious concern among Saint Lucians of all walks of life. This sounds like a newspaper article written last week, right? Believe it or not, that newspaper was written on Wednesday, June 11th, 1986. The headline screamed, "Breathalyzer test coming, drunk drivers beware." For the past 27 years, St. Lucians have sat at their favorite watering hole, waiting. Believe it or not, they are still trying to iron out the legislation. He was convicted of rape. He killed a teenager in her prime, but tonight he has earned himself the coveted spot of luckiest man alive. In 1986, he was 19 years old. His name is Morrell Cox. On March 9th, 1986, Cox raped a 74-year-old woman under a mango tree about 200 yards away from her home. Susie Dovey prosecuted the case and the judge hit Cox with a 20-year slap. Believe it or not, in less than 4 years, the luckiest man alive was out of Her Majesty's prison with his penis in his hand, and he was on the prowl again. On the night of June the 7th, 1991, Donna John, then 18, was walking home with her parents in Auger. Cox, with 2 other men, knocked out the parents unconscious and they abducted Donna John. The rape and murder which followed was one of the most vicious crimes in the history of St. Lucia. In 1994, Cox was sentenced to death. But believe it or not, the same Susie Dovey who prosecuted him the first time and sentenced him to death the second time was the same Susie Dovey who saved his life. In 1999, the luckiest man alive got a new lease on life thanks to Kenneth Foster, Mary Francis, and Isabella Shillingford. Believe it or not, what saved Morrell Cox was the gross inefficiency in the justice system. At birth, he weighed 9 pounds 6 ounces. He was delivered by C-section and doctors backed away from the newborn in horror. One physician made the sign of the cross and shut his eyes to avoid the sight of the child called the devil's baby. The child was born with half-inch pink horns sprouting out of each side of his head. X-rays, blood tests, and all other scans showed no other abnormalities. After 10 days, the horns had grown another quarter inch. The 22-year-old mother asked the Catholic Church to hold an official exorcism ceremony for her child. Do you believe this happened in Saint Lucia? Stay tuned. I will tell you more in 3 minutes. And also, would you believe it if I told you there is someone in Saint Lucia with both a penis and a vagina?
Knowing is the first step. Knowing is confidence. It's a compass guiding you towards medical answers. At Laboratory Services and Consultations Limited, we are in the business of knowing. Knowing where to look and what to look for. And this knowledge guides you and your health provider to your medical answers. We are the focus, precise, and confidential heart of healthcare. The invisible thread binding together all those committed to your well-being. Laboratory Services and Consultations Limited. We focus on results so you can focus on what's important. Need us? Call us. Telephone 459-2200 or visit any of our 10 locations island-wide.
The story of the baby born with horns to a prostitute drug-addicted mother is totally true. It was reported in the Voice newspaper on March 9th, 1985. But it happened in Venezuela, not Saint Lucia. Postpartum syndrome is a type of clinical depression which can affect women and less frequently men, typically after childbirth. Symptoms include sadness, fatigue, changes in sleeping and eating patterns, reduced libido, crying episodes, anxiety, and irritability, whereas infanticide is the killing of one's own child. And this certainly cannot happen in sweet Saint Lucia, right? 37-year-old Catherine Francis of Graceview Fort gave birth to a baby girl on Tuesday, 24th August, 1999. Instead of the smiles and joy associated with the birth of a bouncing baby girl, believe it or not, Catherine opted instead to wrap the child in a plastic bag and bury her in the ground. When questioned, the grieving, albeit grieving mother said the child was a stillborn, so she disposed of it in the latrine. After digging through the septic grave, the baby was not found. But about 2 p.m. the following day, the miracle baby was found, hungry but alive. Believe it or not, Catherine Francis was never charged for attempted murder. She was instead charged for concealment of birth. This case was not isolated. Shortly before that, a Vieux-Fort woman drowned both of her children after her boyfriend and his means of support abandoned her. Sad, but true. Can you stomach some more? Can your stomach really accept some more? Okay. Here is a mind-boggling incident which took place here. On Sunday, 27th August, year 2000, the world of stark reality pervaded that of make-believe, with grim and tragic results. When Franklin Gilbert, a man who was playing the part of a robber for the purpose of a television commercial, was shot to death while performing. The victim, an employee of Sentinel Security Limited, was supposed to enact the part of a robber in the process of carrying out a hold-up on the premises of Jamari Service Station, the location for the scenario. It is reported that during the first moments of the unfolding action, a member of management, son of the proprietor of the establishment, emerged from his office armed with a handgun. To the surprise of the actor and film crew, he unleashed a hail of bullets, 2 of which entered the would-be actor/robber. The actor succumbed to his injuries, and the gas station shooter, well, believe it or not, he remained the star of the show. The truth is truly stranger than fiction. What would possess a 17-year-old girl from Gadet Dennery to abduct a 2-day-old baby? The baby belonged to Soraya George of Latone Viewfort. The newspaper said the 17-year-old posed as a nurse at St. Jude's. The baby was given to her after she asked the mother for her to check her pressure. She then presented the baby to her boyfriend at Gadet, claiming that she had just given birth. But when the police arrived and interrogated her, she claimed that she had tried breastfeeding, but her milk was not coming out, so she fed the baby sugar water instead. Some kind of mother. The baby was, of course, returned to her biological mother. Saint Lucia for you. Is Lady Justice a cruel metaphor? Is she sexist? Do her scales tip or pander more favorably towards fellow ladies? Well, it has always been the tradition in this country that once you are charged with murder, there is no bail for such offenses. Not true. Not true at all. April 26, 2008, a mother of Cicero was charged with the murder of a common-law husband. The charge arose out of an alleged domestic dispute. She was granted bail. Hard to believe, but true. From 2008 until now, Lady Justice has not been as courteous to men. William Blake wrote, "Do what you will, this world's a fiction and is made up of contradiction." For killing his wife Francisca and burying her in a pit toilet, and then deceiving the police into believing that she had gone overseas to meet her lover, John Sampson of Bacatel told the court he struck his wife in the head with a rock. After falling through an open door during the fight, he buried her body in a pit toilet. Victor Philip Le Corbusier represented the killer and, in an uncharacteristic show of brilliance, persuaded the judge to send his client for a 7-year staycation at Her Majesty's Hotel. But Sampson's luck and Le Corbusier's fluke showed the unbelievable disparity in justice in our courts. Take, for example, the case of Aaron Francis. Aaron confessed to stealing a firearm and 5 rounds of ammunition belonging to one Claudius Francis. Aaron was sentenced to 5 years for possession of ammunition and another 5 years for possession of the firearm, and another year for stealing. Simply unbelievable how the scales of justice hinge. If I told you there is someone in Saint Lucia who has both a penis and a vagina, would you believe me? I nearly didn't believe myself telling you this, but it's true. A hermaphrodite is an individual who has both ovarian and testicular tissue. They may be separate or they may be combined in what is called an ovotasis. Hermaphrodites have sex chromosomes showing male or female mosaicism. Individuals with external appearance of one sex but the chromosomal constitution and reproductive organs of the opposite sex are examples of pseudo-hermaphrodism. When one of these people happen to be attracted to flashing lights, handcuffs and guns, this may cause a bit of a problem for jailers. The headline said, "Prisoner makeup a problem for police. St. Lucia's most wanted female, or male, Yolanda Frederick, pleaded not guilty to 2 counts of illegal possession of marijuana, 1 round of ammunition, and of course, a .25 pistol was found on her person. It is said that she pulled out her weapon on the police to evade arrest, but lawmen shot her in her groin area. Due to her genetic composition, the prison warden was left in biological purgatory trying to decide whether she should be housed with the F's or the M's. Unbelievable, but true. When we return, a man takes a goat to be his unlawfully wedded wife.
Introducing a new way to power your journey, brought to you by Lucelec.
In my busy work day, every minute counts. Lucelec chargers keeps me on the move.
For me, it's about getting around and helping create a cleaner future for myself, one drive at a time.
With the Flash Charge app, charging is simple. Tap, plug in and go. Wherever I am, Lucelec's got me covered.
Lucelec's EV charging network. Fast, reliable, and always there for your journey. Download the Flash Charge app today and power your journey with Lucelec.
Crime seems so easy, a plan and schemas. What more do you need? Henry Hill wasn't wrong when he explained in Goodfellas. Nobody goes to jail unless they want to, unless they make themselves get caught. This has been so true. Sometimes the best alibi is the most ridiculous and far-fetched, but it's the one which the cops gravitate to. Remember this guy? Michel Tommy. He was a star witness to a murder in Marishill in 1992. Tommy, in a prepared statement, said, "At about 10:30 p.m. Friday, 3 young men in their early 20s entered the living room area. They were all dressed in black attire. They demanded money. One was pointing a shotgun and the other two were armed with something I could not identify. Danny got up from his chair and attempted to take his wallet from his back pocket. Suddenly, he was shot dead by the man holding the shotgun. Having murdered Danny, he continued to terrorize the other occupants of the house. We threw whatever we had, and the men made good their escape." The Goodfellas forgot to mention the occupants of the house at the time were enjoying a night of gambling when the ninjas busted in. The story had all the hallmarks of a plot written by Quentin Tarantino. Everyone in Saint Lucia took the story with a grain of salt, except for Police Commissioner Hemingway and his deputy, Vernon Augustine. Believe it or not, no one has ever been arrested for the death of Danny Habib. Vice documentary films have reported on a community in Mexico who take great pride in having sex with donkeys. That could never happen in Saint Lucia, you may think. But you would be so wrong. It was plastered on the nation's most bava newspaper. $375 is court price for sex with goat. Only Rick Wayne. The court learned that Gerald Joseph, a man of sound mind from Foncaco Soufre, defiled himself with a four-legged animal. In his confession to police, the accused said, "I took it under the bridge. I removed my pants and underwear. I held the goat by his hind legs and I took out my penis and pushed it in its vagina. The goat was trying to escape. I did not have time to ejaculate. I saw Tony Esnat, the owner of the goat, and I started to run." Believe it or not, St. Lucia, Justice Adrian Saunders fined the goat rapist $375 and 1 year probation. And the witnesses in the courtroom remember the accused saying, "C'est pour ça, le moi qui t'ai ici, n'a acheté un cabrit." Where do they find these people? Disability is not a brave struggle or courage in the face of adversity. Disability is an art. It's an ingenious way to live. But who would choose to be disabled for $20,000 US? We usually hear stories of amputation due to accidents and especially diabetes. Seldom are people's extremities, and in this case, tools, amputated for $20,000. April 5th, 2001, The Voice newspaper relayed that Sherwin Cherubin was admitted to Victoria Hospital, missing both his hands from the wrists. Sherwin told police he was kidnapped by 5 men from his neighborhood. He was chauffeured to Sandy Fe, and the men demanded $20,000, which they believe he had. According to Cherubin, they wanted their portion. When Cherubin couldn't or wouldn't produce the US, the men hacked off his hands. Afterwards, the Samaritans drove him to Victoria Hospital. Believe it or not, St. Lucians do crazy things for money. At a glance, everyone knows who these 2 guys are. Most Catholics are still unforgiving. The 2 gentlemen hold the title of the only 2 men ever to unleash the flames of hell in the church, and while doing so, kill 2 people and burn several others in the process. Believe it or not, they are not the only St. Lucians to have accomplished this. Primus St. Croix admitted to getting a special call from God, who told him to go out and burn several churches and idols in Brooklyn. After serving his time, he was deported back to the Helen of Troy. Shortly after arriving, he was arrested after making threats to continue his church burning spree in St. Lucia. What are the odds of 4 similarly minded Rastafarians living on a tiny island with a propensity for more fire? Rastas, believe it or not, it happened. When I first heard this last story, I said no. This could never happen in St. Lucia. Frankly, I think I rolled on the ground like the Geico dog whilst the story was being relayed. But the man speaks with such conviction, superlatives, and the humor mixed with Gopwell is woven into every diabolic sentence. I drove to Sophia Sunday morning and I listened attentively while this man relayed the story. He said he always had a sneaky feeling the mother of his children was being unfaithful. He tracked her, he searched her bag, he examined her drawers, but his suspicions were never confirmed. While out fishing, he got a premonition that his lady was involved in some unholy, unmatrimonial action while he was out trying to get the catch of the day. So, he turned his little boat around and headed home. His sixth sense was spot on. The sum of all his fears was rolled up in bed with another man. That evening, he confronted his lover. He placed an axe on the table, a cutlass on the table, and a bottle of rubbing alcohol and a needle and thread on the table. He told her, and I quote, "I can axe you to death, I can chop you, or I can sew your vagina. Choose one." The lady is alive and well today with no chop marks. So, you know what he did, right? With surgical precision, the Mad Max from Sulphur City sewed the lips of his lover's vagina shut. Believe it or not, St. Lucia, it happened. Good night.
Could go on and on, the fool has never been told. Could go on and on, the fool has never been told. Could go on and on, the fool has never been